All right, here we go. I'm here. Oh, wow, look at the lights over there. Okay. Well, now we're gonna do this. There we go. Yeah, I'm late because just sometimes mornings don't go like that. Cats vomit, and it happens. Can't help it. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Today is Thursday, March 5th, 2020. My name is Jeremy, and this is my first cup of coffee. Well, I hope you had a great Wednesday. I did. Did some good work, some good financial stuff on the books. You know, when I talk about that, like most of the time, it's bookkeeping. It's, oh, I spent money here. I got to put it in QuickBooks. You know, I'm just doing that. But sometimes I actually sit down and look and say, okay, what are we paying for? Which card's paying for it? How does that impact cash flow? Is there a better way to approach this? And sometimes there is. And yesterday I found some of those. So spent about 2 hours working on the books where typically I spend 45 minutes. And so felt good, felt productive. What else did I do? Went to the gym, went and coached people at another gym, came home, ate dinner, went to bed. Dinner was crackers and cheese and peanut butter. And what else? Not much else. I was just so tired. It was a long day. It was a long day. I was tired. And I just didn't feel like making anything. What I really wanted was pizza. I was going to make pizza, but I decided that I just didn't have the energy. Oh, there was an avocado in there somewhere, too. What else can I say? What else happened yesterday? I don't know. Email and it just, it was a pretty typical day. It was just a busy day. Nothing to write home about. It's an interesting expression. To write home about. Imagine it being so long ago that if you wanted to share something of excitement with your family, you had to write a letter. No more of this, hey, there's a moose in my backyard, text. I'd have to look out there and say, all right, is that moose in my backyard worth writing a letter? I wonder if people kept a list of small things and maybe wrote a monthly letter. On Tuesday, there was a moose in the backyard. On Wednesday, I stubbed my toe. On Thursday, I died of dysentery. Anybody else out there fans of Oregon Trail? That was a good game. I'm having one of those mornings where in one sense, I'm very rested, feeling very awake, but at the same time, maybe not. We'll see how the day goes. What is today? Today's Thursday. So there's an episode out. What's today's episode about? Oh, today is the second or third fight scene analysis that I did with Josh Blum. And he released it on his podcast on Monday. Ours drops today. Now, this is one of those where you want to watch the YouTube video, which we've linked in the show notes. Thank you, Stacy. The fight dragon, the fight scene breakdown of Dragon something. Anyway, it's another one with Benny the Jet and Jackie Chan. And if you checked out the last one, it was a lot of fun. And so Josh and I said, hey, let's do this again. And what we're really looking for this time is some feedback. Is this something guys want us to keep doing or not? Because it's different. It requires, it doesn't require, but in order to get the full effect, you kind of have to watch a video. I'm not sure how fun it is to listen to us do commentary with nothing to hear it commentated over. So we need feedback. We're going to keep finding ways to work together if people don't like this, but we want to be really honest. We want to do something that everyone likes. But that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. So check that out. Let me know. Let me know what you think. And what else is today? Client. I think that's it. Yeah. It's a client workday. It's funny. If we go back even 6 months and look at what I was getting done in how much time, I felt productive, but I look at what I'm getting done now, it's so much more. I've got this entire consulting business, and I'm running whistlekick. Tasks expand to the time available. Some, I don't know if we'd call it philosophy, some people even go so far as to say that time is kind of a construct, and that if you think about the number of times that you got something done just in time, or that you left late to drive somewhere and you arrived just in time, that defies statistics. That there's this kind of metaphysical thing happening that we make our own time. Now, I'm not saying that. And I don't even know that I have the understanding of the way that's presented to have an opinion. But it's kind of a neat idea. What if we have all the time that we need? What if we can affect time? What would you do? If you had all the time you wanted, what would you do with it? I would probably sleep more. I'd probably spend more time outside. Probably be more regular with working out in all the ways that I do. That's probably it. Well, instead of going down some weird metaphysical rabbit hole that we might not come out of, let's, James Lipton died. Everybody know that, right? So why is that relevant? Because James Lipton was my interview hero. I loved Inside the Actors Studio, not because of who he spoke to, but because of the way he spoke to them, the conversations they had. His interview style was utterly phenomenal. And he's the one that I look to the most as I do martial arts radio. And in fact, it's been a long time since I really watched those shows, those episodes. I should probably do it again. Now that I've done hundreds of interviews, I should probably see what else he does. See what else I can pick up to get better. But why was I picking this up? Because I was going to see what questions we have. Because this is a question or comment driven show. And if you want to ask a question or post a comment for me to respond to, you do that below and answer it the next day. Oh, well, that's great. People being weird on YouTube. All right. All right, here we go. Boom. Look at all these comments. You guys are great. No, don't thumbs down that. Boom, 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 boom. All right, Stacy wrote some stuff in. Here's a joke for Frank. We're going to start with this one. How many martial arts instructors does it take to change a light bulb? 10. 1 to change the light bulb, and 9 to say, in our school, we do it a little differently. It is sadly the most accurate cliche joke about martial arts that exists. March is Women's History Month. What women have influenced your martial arts training? That's a great question. Nice, Stacy. So I was raised in the martial arts by a married couple, John and Beth Belot. Beth has been on the show. John is willing to come on the show, but he says it's not quite time yet. There are a couple things that he wants to do before he comes on the show. But we'll get him. We'll get him at some point. And if you listen to Beth's episode, you can probably read between the lines and see that this woman raised me. When I make a list of the most influential people in my life, she is in the top 5. I knew her from the time I was 4. I spent more time with her, cumulative, than anyone but my mother. And that might even extend until now. 4 hours a week, 14 years. Maybe closer to 5 hours, right? So 200, 250 hours a year. There's thousands of hours. And she had children. Sean is a year younger than me. So she was in mom mode. Who I am today as a martial artist, I think you can tell a lot about a martial artist by the way they do anything. By the way they spar, by the way they do forms, by the way they do their basics, whatever it is. And the person who you would likely find the most similarities in the way that I train or the way that I do things is her. There was a fun experience. We hadn't trained together in probably 20 years. And we were doing some forms together. And just fell right back in. Timing, everything else, just boom. Not saying we could have quite stepped out on the floor for synchronized forms at a competition and won, but we wouldn't have been last. At least based on what I've seen. Other people, my mother was my coach through competition. She was the reason I got into martial arts. She found it and said, "Do you want to do this?" And I was 4, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." She encouraged me and at times forced me to remain in when I was a adolescent, early teenager, and wanted to stop in the way that all adolescents and early teenagers want to stop doing everything. Who else? Those are the two. Those are the two biggies. I mean, I've known some absolutely wonderful women in the martial arts, but they haven't been impactful in the same way. Come on. What are you doing? Stupid tablet. There we go. All right. We'll mix these up. A woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong it is until it's in hot water. Eleanor Roosevelt. That quote starts off like it's going to be disrespectful, doesn't it? A woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong it is until it gets in hot water. Eleanor Roosevelt has some wonderful quotes. She's probably I wonder if she's better known now than her husband. I bet people quote her more often than they do him. I can't speak to, and honestly don't really want to speak to any gender differences, but I think inherently people are like this. I think you can tell a lot about a person based on how they respond to challenge. The greater the challenge, the more you can tell stuff about them. When things get really bad for me, I tend to become very quiet, very focused, very matter of fact, very solution oriented. Long ago, I identified I am at my best when others are at their worst. When someone really needs something, when something is awful, I'm probably a good person to call. Fortunately, I don't get that call too often, but I get things done. And this is likely why for 15 years I made a really good IT consultant. Because when people's computers were down, their businesses were down, and I needed to find a way forward and not panic and not let the energy around me keep me from making good decisions. And I learned a lot during that time. The next one, the last one for the day, and thank you to Stacy and Frank for your questions and comments today. I like that we're mixing it up. When one who is lost understands that he must turn back, he is not far from having found the way. I'd love, Stacy, do you know who said that or wrote that? I want to give credit if possible. When one who is lost understands that he must turn back, he is not far from having found the way. It is really easy to just keep going and not admit that you've made a bad decision. There are times when that's appropriate. Seth Godin wrote a book. I think it's called The Dip. And he talks about this very thing. From an entrepreneurship standpoint, the idea that before you start doing something, you should decide under what conditions you stop. If you start a business and let's say you invest $100,000, if you haven't, it's a Zen proverb. If you run out of that money and you haven't achieved X, Y, or Z, you stop. People tend to do this with financial things. I think that's really where it's most important, this idea that we throw good money after bad and good time after bad and just let's keep it going, let's keep it going. And I'll admit, there have been moments where I've thought, is this what has to happen with whistlekick? And then I look at signs that say, no, you're figuring this out. This is big stuff. And it's honestly, if I had decided under what conditions I would have stopped, I would have turned back on the path. I wouldn't have expected it taking this long. Never would have imagined taking this long. But I took a look at sales yesterday, and they're higher than they've been in 9 months. We've turned a corner. We are not out of the woods, but there's enough light. I've figured out enough things. I saw it in the books yesterday. Of course, the further down the path you have to go, or have gone, and thus the further you have to turn around, the more difficult it is. Anyone who has hiked in the backcountry or spent much time in the woods at all probably knows Sometimes you get lost. And it's funny that this comes up because maybe this is what I do on maybe this is one trail that I hike in the spring. Years ago, there were 3 trails that I was unable to finish. My first time, for those of you that are local, if you look at, that's a cat toy, if you look at scenery of Vermont, you're likely to bump into a mountain called Camel's Hump. First time I hiked Camel's Hump, I didn't make it to the top. I ran out of light. A smaller one in the area, less iconic. First time I hiked Mount Hunger was the hike where my knees went. It took me 3-4 hours to get down. And it took me, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get up. And then the third one, I've gone back and done both of those multiple times now, successfully. Third one was in a little town called Eden. And I was hiking, and it was late spring after a very brutal winter, and we lost a lot of trees. A lot of those trees had the marks, the blazes, showing where the trail went. And as I was hiking, just kind of following along, and I had to double back a number of times. And I got to a place where I couldn't quite tell what was going on, but I saw some moose tracks. Well, that's where we're following, because animals use trails. It took longer than it probably should have for me to realize that I wasn't on the trail. But by the time I realized that, a combination of my knees not being in great shape and pride kept me from coming back. So I said, well, we're just going to follow this adventure and see where it takes us. Where it took us, I came down. I had to cross a river with no bridge. I was on logging roads. This is back when my knees were really bad. And I knew, whenever I went out hiking in these days, I knew that I was going to be laid up for a couple days. My knees just couldn't handle it. And so the idea of hiking more, that was my logic, than I needed to was silly. When I finally make it back to a main road, and for some bizarre reason, never before or since have I put a road map in my pack. I did that day. Glad I did, because I was able to identify where I was. I was on the exact opposite side of the mountain. I was 10 miles from my car. Awesome. My pride meant that instead of hiking a little bit extra, maybe another extra mile, I now had to walk 10. Okay, let's do this. So I started walking. And I did something that I have never done before or since. I hitchhiked. The 4th car that came along stopped. It was this tiny little Ford Aspire driven by this little old man and with his little old wife in the front seat. And they could tell, I had a big pack on. They knew I was hiking. And they said, we're going, I think it was about halfway before they turned, and they said, we'll take you as far as we can. I said, that'd be great. Here, I'm saving 5 miles. This car could barely make it up the hills. It was, it was rough. And we get to that turning point, and they don't turn off. And I realize they're continuing to where my car is. They're driving me there, and based on the conversation we were having and the car and what was in the car, it was unlikely that they had extra gas to just spend on anybody. They were probably living pretty tight. The woman talked about having walked to her job these 10 miles along this path, this road, in her youth. And at that moment, I remembered something that had happened the prior day. I was visiting a friend and stepped into the elevator, and on the floor of the elevator was a $20 bill. And I still had that $20 bill in my pocket. Didn't ask them, I didn't offer it, I just kind of left it on the seat. They dropped me off at my car, and that was it. Came home, took a hot shower, went to bed. I don't remember the rest. I need to go back and hike that trail again. But what I like about that story is that it really felt like it wasn't until I admitted that my pride had gotten me into a spot, that I was being arrogant, that I was being foolish, that the solution opened up. Once I said, okay, I was dumb, I should not have done this, now I have to solve the problem, and I started walking back to my car, that's when the solution arrived. And so I need to go back and I need to hike that mountain and do it the right way so I can close that chapter. And to be honest, we're going back close to 15 years now. I keep forgetting to do it, but maybe this spring is the spring. So. Well, that was a long episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate the questions, the comments from Frank and Stacy this morning, and I would love to encourage all of you to drop something in there that I can respond to, because it's far more fun when we have a bunch of you contributing. It's more fun for me. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, because we do this show every weekday morning, 6:30 a.m. Eastern, here on YouTube. Go check out that episode of Martial Arts Radio. Let me know what you think. Let us know. Should we keep doing, so Josh and I keep doing these episodes or not? And now, for your homework, I want you to think about a time where you were foolish or arrogant, where you should have turned back down the path. You should have turned around. You should have stopped doing what you were doing, but you didn't. What did you learn? What lesson came from that? And not just the surface lesson, or I was dumb, I was foolish. But really, what lesson? In my case, I was far too trusting of random animal tracks. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care. Peace.